The Spanish Grand Prix is over and F1 is moving immediately on to the next race, which is the Austrian Grand Prix at the Red Bull Ring, which means that once again it is time for my preview and predictions. This is a series where I'll be previewing, and then at the end of the video I'll be giving out my early predictions for the Grand Prix. If you enjoyed the video then please hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now, let's get into the video. As usual, I'll be talking about the top 5 teams later on, which is Aston Martin, Mercedes, McLaren, Ferrari and Red Bull, so stick around for that. Yep, it is the second race of a triple header, and it is the return of sprint, meaning that once again the teams and drivers will only have 1 hour of practice before they head into sprint qualifying on Friday, and then Saturday will be the sprint race in the morning, followed by Grand Prix qualifying before the main race on Sunday. Sprint has been somewhat of a success at the Red Bull Ring, which is probably why it keeps getting it at this circuit. One of the reasons is because the Red Bull Ring often has mixed weather, and the chance of rain is pretty high, and the weather forecast right now is showing that there is still a good chance of rain, so we're going to see some mixed up weather, which always shakes up the grid. The Red Bull Ring as a circuit also features a lot of overtaking opportunities with plenty of heavy braking zones, and the circuit is also surprisingly hard on tyres, which often shakes up a race. Teams that are hard on their rear tyres are going to find this race pretty tricky, as they will be asking a lot from the traction zones. Teams like Ferrari, who are typically good on the brakes and with slower speed corners, could find themselves in a better position, as should McLaren. I can see Red Bull though having a bit more of a harder time this weekend, which is why I think the racing will be exciting once again. As I mentioned, the tyres take a surprising amount of punishment due to the number of traction zones on this otherwise very short circuit. But even so, Pirelli will be bringing the softest tyres in the range, which is a complete opposite of what we just saw at Barcelona, meaning that the C3 is the hard tyre, the C4 is the medium tyre, and the C5 will be the soft compound of tyre. In last year's race, there was a total of 44 pit stops, as a majority of drivers opted for a 2-stop strategy, but a couple of drivers were forced onto 3 stops. The race featured the use of the medium and the hard tyres, as the softs were pretty much reserved for qualifying. Going into this weekend, I anticipate that it will be another mixture of 2 and 3 stops, with the drivers using the medium and hard tyres once again, unless they have a couple of spare soft tyres if qualifying is wet. Overtaking at the Red Bull Ring is pretty easy, as there are a lot of opportunities for overtaking. The circuit is pretty much one giant DRS zone, and last year there was a total of 63 on-track overtakes. To help with overtaking, the circuit features 3 DRS zones, and they're all very close together. The first DRS zone is down the pit straight into turn 1, the second DRS zone is on the exit of turn 1 heading into turn 3, and the third and final DRS zone is on the exit of turn 3 heading down into turn 4. With the large amount of DRS, it is very possible that we see DRS trains and cars getting stuck as they get close but not close enough to overtake, meaning that pit stops are going to be very important this weekend. Last year's pole position lap time was set by Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, and that time was a 1 minute 4.391. During that lap, Verstappen was able to reach a top speed of 324 km per hour. In the main Grand Prix itself, the fastest lap was also set by Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, and that time was a 1 minute 7.012. In the Grand Prix this year, if it is dry, then I expect that the qualifying pole position lap time will be beaten, due to qualifying now being on a Saturday as opposed to Friday like it was last year, and they will still have time to optimise their setup after the sprint race. In the Grand Prix, the time could be beaten if we see a late race pit stop by any driver. I just want to say that if you are enjoying the video so far, then I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now though, let's get back to the video and let's talk about the top 5 teams, starting with Aston Martin. For Aston Martin, the Spanish Grand Prix was not a happy homecoming for Fernando Alonso as he finished in 12th place and teammate Lance Stroll was in 14th place. Both drivers were lapped by the frontrunners and things are looking somewhat bleak for Aston Martin as they have fallen into the midfield. Some of you have suggested that I shouldn't bother talking about them anymore, but at least I suppose we can talk about the midfield when talking about Aston Martin, and honestly going into this race I can actually see them being the 5th fastest team. This circuit plays to their strengths quite nicely. They are typically good in the traction zones, and they have decent pace in a straight line, so I can see them getting at least one of the cars into the points, and they should be on top of the midfield team, and they shouldn't have to worry about Alpine or VCarb coming for them this weekend. For Mercedes, it was a fantastic race as they scored a podium with Lewis Hamilton, and teammate George Russell finished in 4th place after a slow stop and changing onto hard tyres for the final stint instead of softs. However, in general, this was a very good showing by Mercedes as they beat Ferrari with both drivers. Going into the next race at Austria, I think it will be a good test for them. In the last couple of years, the Red Bull Ring has been a bit of a tricky circuit for them as a team, whereas Barcelona has been a happy hunting ground for them. This will test if they've gotten on top of the traction zones and their weaknesses with the previous cars. If they have, then I expect that we will see them in the mix once again with McLaren and Ferrari, who I do anticipate will be stronger than them this weekend. For McLaren, the Spanish Grand Prix was a victory that slipped away for Lando Norris as he was jumped at the start, and towards the end of the race he was reeling back the gap to Max Verstappen and Red Bull as he did have fantastic tyre wear, and in general he was very fast. At least of course with Lando Norris, because teammate Oscar Piastri had a shocking race as he was severely lacking race pace compared to his teammates, and really for Oscar this was not good enough. With the recent upgrades for McLaren, I expect that we should see them be very strong at the Red Bull Ring, and I would not be surprised if we see them fighting for victory once again this weekend. Last year, this was the first race that revitalised their season and put them on the right track. With a year's worth of development, they have really got on top of any issues that they have had in the past, and because of that, I expect that they will be towards the front. And this circuit, I think, should be one where Lando Norris could get his second win, and if Oscar Piastri gets back to full pace, then it could be one where he gets his first win, but he needs to improve his race pace and improve his ability at looking after the tyres over a stint. For Ferrari, the Spanish Grand Prix was a difficult one, as Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz came together on track, and then Sainz decided he wanted a piece of Hamilton as he squeezed both Leclerc and Hamilton at turn 1. Leclerc did have very good pace and managed to look after the tyres very well in the first stint by extending by quite a lot of laps. Sainz though was struggling with looking after his tyres and seemed to be eating through each set that he had. Going into this race, I expect that Ferrari will be back to their best. This has been a very strong track for Ferrari recently. They are always strong on the brakes and they get good traction out of slow corners. Not only this, but Leclerc did win in 2022, and in 2023 he was second to a dominant Verstappen, so there is also recent history on their side. With this in mind, I have a feeling that they can be in the fight for pole position and even the race win if it is dry. Leclerc has also been very good at looking after his tyres this year, and that is a requirement for the Red Bull Ring, so I expect good things from the Scuderia. And finally for Red Bull, Barcelona should have been one of their strongest tracks and a circuit where they would dominate. But instead, Max Verstappen won the race by the skin of his teeth, and Sergio Perez had a shocking race with a massive lack of pace, and there's not really any more to say about it other than that for Perez. Going into the Red Bull Ring, I expect that for Red Bull, it will be a more difficult race. The circuit is not one that suits their car very nicely, and with Ferrari and McLaren looking like they will be very competitive, then I expect that for Max Verstappen to win, he will need to be at his very best. But let's be honest, he's at his very best most weekends anyway, so he does still have a good chance of winning. So with that in mind then, what are my early predictions for the Austrian Grand Prix? Well, I think the top midfield team and midfield driver will be Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin, as I do think this is a circuit that will suit Aston very nicely. And yes, I am now counting Aston Martin to be a midfield team. So what about pole position? Well, this is actually going to be quite a tricky one, as there's quite a lot of different drivers I think who could be on pole position. But the driver I'm going to go with is Lando Norris in the McLaren, as I think he should be very good over one lap. But what about the race in the top 5? Well, in P5, I'm going to go for Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes. P4 will be Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. P3 will be Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. P2 will be Max Verstappen, and yeah, I'm gonna go for a Lando Norris victory at the Red Bull Ring. But that is what I think. The question is though, what do you guys think will happen? In the comment section down below, please do let me know. And as always, comment, leave a like, and subscribe for more F1 content. Thank you all so much for watching.